Welcome back to the Nebraska Shoot Around podcast, the close but not close enough edition. Joining me, as always, is Jacob Bigelow. And I'd ask you how you're doing, but we've already talked about that. So I know it's not super great, but thank you for kind of getting through illness here. And I guess we can call this your flu pod.
This is my flu pod. This is we're powering through it for the people here. And do I dare say that, the last two games have given me even more of a I mean, not even more, but
Yeah.
something, there's something to talk about. There are signs of promise, even though it's ended in two losses. But yeah, that's what we're here to talk about. Two prime examples of it's not how you start, it's how you finish with Nebraska basketball. So
Yeah, well, this program's pretty good at kicking a guy when he's down. I don't know if this is obviously blowouts are disappointing to watch. We experienced two of those back to back. Now we get the close but can't quite finish it off, like that Ohio State game in particular. Michigan State, they battled, they just didn't have enough juice to finish off the game. Ohio State, they had that game won, and then two plays, I would say, were the reason. I mean, you can include in three there, but they had three chances to seal that game to win it and blew all three of those plays. And that's how you end up losing a game to a team that you, in a game where you led by 5 points with 37 seconds left. But yeah, let's kind of dive into it. Start with that Ohio State game. That was let's see here, an 87-79 loss in overtime. But like I said, Nebraska led with 5 seconds left, or led by 5 with 37 seconds left after a dunk from Lat Mayen on a great play from Kobe Webster. So like he's fired up, like you can even say like he's celebrating on the court. And then they're like, the bench is like, get back. And fortunately he got back and they didn't, that wasn't a problem, but Nebraska, we'll get kind of more in depth into what happened there, but they weren't able to close it out. And then in overtime, Ohio State like banged in 3 threes right out the gates, and they were never in it after that. So what are your kind of general takeaways from what you saw in this one?
Well, I mean, this is probably the first game that we did a somewhat, not, I wouldn't say in depth, but we kind of did a dedicated preview of this game. And of course, the people we highlighted as the ones to watch get completely and totally shut down. And a guy whose name we didn't even mention in Malachi Branham goes off for 35, right?
35. Yep.
35 on the night, the most points by a freshman in all of college basketball this year. 13 for 19 shooting, 6 of 10 from 3. Really impressive. And of course, they did just about everything they could when it came to Liddell and Zed Key, and the defensive game plan was there and it was executed well. It was just, it was guys like Branham at the start of the game, and then Jamari Wheeler at the end, who got free and ultimately I think the difference were the plays made by those two guys for Ohio State.
Oh, absolutely. And Jamari Wheeler, the kind of super senior grad transfer from Penn State, he's never been an offensive throughout his entire career. He's kind of been the game manager, quintessential game manager point guard, where there'll be games where he probably has more assists than points. He just doesn't hardly ever shoot the ball. And I don't think he had a double-digit scoring game yet this season going into it. And he finished with 16 points on 6 of 8 shooting, including 4 or 5 from 3. And there were a couple of times where Nebraska just went underneath screens on him because, I mean, that's not he's a quality shooter in terms of a guy that can hit an open shot. He just doesn't take many of them.
It's like the classic trope with point guards, where it's like, oh, he's not a shooter, but when he shoots, he takes the smart ones or takes the open ones and he makes them. I feel like that's a classic trope with some point guards.
He's like 37-38% on like less than 2 attempts a game going into it. So it's a guy that, you don't want to give him wide open ones, but he's probably 4th or 5th on the scouting report in terms of, all right, this is the guy we need to take care of. And he goes off for 16, hits 4 threes, and that is how you win a game that you trailed late in it. Those are the kind of plays that you need to pull off a win like this. And that's a kind of contribution that Nebraska hasn't really gotten enough of. You mentioned Branham, and I went back and rewatched this one, and he had 21 in the first half. Going into the game, he was 5 of 15 from 3 on the season. He had scored 63 points in 10 games. So it's a guy that, again, probably 4th or 5th at best on the scouting report when you're going through it. And he just goes off and makes Nebraska pay for all of its mistakes. So I didn't get a chance to watch through the overtime. I kind of chose not to watch through the overtime before this, but I did watch the entire regulation and charted like all his buckets and plays. And he had 14 scores in regulation, including he had 12 buckets and then 2 trips to the foul line. And of those 14, I thought 10 of his scores were because of bad defense from Nebraska. And he had 3 possessions where he had made really good plays and scored over decent defense, a good contest, kind of walling him up, and he just finished over the top, hit a tough pull up, that type of deal. One of it was off an offensive rebound scramble situation where just bad luck, that'll happen if you don't take care and clean up the defensive glass. And then the other 10 were just out of position, were blow-bys, were going under a screen, were not getting back in transition and giving the team numbers, and then suddenly he's wide open because somebody has to jump to the ball. Like that's how he got his 35. And it's just such a shame to see those kind of plays happen, because you look at what Nebraska did on EJ Liddell and Zed Key, and those are Ohio State's top 2 scorers, 2 of the best post players in the country. Statistically, you look at it, and they are both elite post scorers. They finished with 17 points on a combined 5 of 19 shooting and 4 turnovers. Liddell hardly shot the ball. He's 3 of 5, scored 7 points, or Key rather. And Liddell, 2 of 14 from the field, and most of his shots were tough ones. So Nebraska did what it needed to do at the top of the scouting report. It's just they didn't get a complete defensive performance. Too many lapses in concentration, in effort, in communication led to a guy like Malachi Branham almost single-handedly winning this game and stealing this for Ohio State when Nebraska should have won the game. And a lot of that was Bryce McGowan's. He was the primary defender on Branham for most of the game. And a lot of those 10 bad defensive possessions, he had more than half of them. CJ Wilcher had a few in there as well, had 3 or 4 of them. And then I think there's one where Latmayan, bad transition defense was the reason that Branham got wide open. So it was a few different guys, but mostly McGowan's. And this back-to-back games now where Bryce has gone up against the freshman, and the freshman on the other side has gotten the better of the battle. I mean, Bryce finished with 18 points, but it took him 19 shots to get there. And then in the Michigan State game, obviously another 5-star freshman guard on the other side in Max Christie. And Christie was really efficient and scored a game high in that one. So it's getting to the point where we have got to see more from Bryce. And Hoiberg liked Bryce's process in terms of getting downhill more. You look at it, he was 2 of 6 from 3 and 4 of 13 inside the arc. So the ratio 2 to 1 of 2s to 3s, that's probably a little better than that. It's probably a decent enough ratio. Eventually, like you can't tell him to not shoot the ball. This is the guy that's made 3s throughout his high school career. He's the guy that's capable of it, but it just hasn't happened. You can't abandon it entirely, but he can't have games where he's taking more 3s than 2s. Unfortunately, he didn't have whether it was selection with some of his takes, whether it was just the strength to finish. Some of it was just bad luck. A couple of these were mid-range jumpers, so that's not really the same thing as getting to the rim. But he's got to be able to convert a little bit better. But Hoiberg liked his process in that one at least. But defensively, we're not seeing improvement on that side of the ball. And it's a combination of occasionally he'll get blown by because of foot speed, whatever. But there's too many. I mean, you look at it, one of those possessions where he did score on was ball watching, and Branham back cut him along the baseline for an alley-oop. The pass just took him under the rim, and he got it stuck on the rim trying to catch and put it up. It was just a bad pass. should have been a dunk on Bryce. So that's something that is going to have to improve, both for Nebraska and for Bryce's sake and for his future. Like all these clips are going on his resume, and scouts are going to look at that. Obviously, they care more about what you can do on offense and hope that they can get enough defense out of you and kind of hide you within the team defensive scheme and all that. But if you're giving up more than you're scoring, then that is a serious problem, and that certainly looked to be the case in this one.
I feel like that's been our biggest question with Bryce since the start of the year was his defense, and I feel like it's been a consistent theme with him. Is like, you can see the upside that the scouts are looking for on the offensive end. It's just the other end seems to be one big question mark, and that just continues to be one of the biggest lingering questions I feel like with this team.
Yeah, and we'll touch on Bryce again once we get to Michigan State, but kind of focusing in on this Ohio State game and the end of it. So like I said, they're up 3, and Kobe Webster gets the ball, blows by his man, great pass across the lane to a cutting lap man for an emphatic dunk. The PBA is going nuts. They're celebrating. Then they get back on defense, and Jamari Wheeler brings the ball up and like jump stops at the wing. And Justin Ahrens, their best 3-point shooter, who I'm sure Hoiberg kind of circled. He was with Kyle Young out. He's their third leading scorer in that game coming into it. And he lifts up behind Wheeler, and Wheeler kind of shovels it back to him. And you see Wilcher was on Ahrens, and Webster was on Wheeler. And Wilcher goes over the top. Webster switches. Both guys go with Ahrens. Simple pass right back to Wheeler, and he knocked it down. So you go from up 5, feeling great with 37 seconds left, to 9 seconds later. That's all it took. It took 9 seconds, and now it's a 2-point game, 1-possession game, and Ohio State's feeling good about its chances right now. So in the blink of an eye, because of a miscommunication, a misread, a miscommunication, whatever the case may be there. I don't know what they were told to do in that situation. Obviously, they switch almost every kind of interchange normally, but they were not on the same page. Both guys kind of panicked, reacted to the ball, left Wheeler wide open, and now it's game on. And moving ahead, they got their press break in. They got it to Lat Mayen. And he was fouled with 22.4 to go. And this is a guy that's, Nebraska doesn't have a lot of great free throw shooters, but he's a guy that's been decent at least. Should have this pulling up, but yeah, he was 78% last season on very, very little volume. He was 21 to 27. In this one, he was 11 of 14 at the line going into that one, I believe. And so he was 2 for 2 before that one. So he's 11 of 14 going to the line with the chance to, again, essentially seal it, and 0 for 2. And not only did he miss both, they barely got there. They were both way short. So that's probably, there's some nerves there. That's big moment and not being able to rise to the occasion. But that's, you see that second time where it hit the front of the rim and dropped straight down. You're like, oh boy, here we go again. Is that kind of what you were feeling in that moment?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I've ever seen Lat miss long. I think even if it's from 3 or those free throw misses, I feel like it's always short armed. I don't think I've ever seen him miss long.
Yeah. So they clear the board, and Michi Johnson, I believe, had the ball, and actually Kobe Webster did a great job defensively here. Johnson put his head down and attacked. Webster slid his feet, stayed in front, didn't foul him, forced up a terrible, like, wild shot off the backboard. The only problem is, man, again, shot goes up, and EJ Liddell, who is man is guarding, sprints directly to the front of the rim as man kind of turns his head, runs right by man. And Derek Walker was kind of in position. He maybe could have boxed out Liddell, but he didn't know he was coming. It wasn't his man. So Liddell sprints to the rim and kind of seals Walker out of the way. Lat's behind him, gets the rebound, goes up, and they got a foul on. So again, you box out on the perimeter instead of turning your head and watching. They probably secure that. Derek gets that rebound, and now you're feeling good. Instead, they foul him with 8.9 left, and he goes to the line, and unlike Mayan, he knocked both down. So now it's a tie game with 8.9 to go, ball on the baseline. And Fred Hoiberg said, like, originally, like, the play with it, kind of what they called, he called the timeout between the free throws, to kind of ice the shooter a little bit and to draw up the play. I believe it was their last time out. So Kobe Webster inbounded it and said the first look was to Bryce and kind of curling around in front of it. Bryce was open. I don't know why, if that was the first option, Kobe didn't give it to him. Instead, he called his own number. So he inbounded to Derek Walker, got the ball back, and then took it up and never passed the ball, looked to get downhill. And he got past his man, but Liddell slid over, contested, and Webster threw up a wild shot. Tried to finish over the top, threw it hard off the backboard. And Derek Walker was there, kind of caught it midair with 1.5 on the clock. So he probably doesn't have time to pull that down and try to go back up. He's going for the putback, trying to put it in. It's right there. But I think Eugene Brown III was right there, right place, right time, just stuck his hand up, blocked the shot. We're heading to overtime. What do you think about that last possession?
I thought the same thing that you thought after what Coach Hoiberg said. I mean, Bryce was there. I mean, I figured with Verge on the bench, you know, as he had been for the last 12 or so minutes of that game. I mean, he wasn't there. That's probably something we need to touch on. We'll touch on them, but with Verge being out, I thought for sure the draw up was going to be to Bryce. And Kobe had played well, and I'd liked, you know, how they looked on offense, you know, with Kobe in, but that's one other subject. You know, end of game, I thought, you know, this is Bryce's time to shine. I thought they're for sure going to find him a look, get him either on the, you know, put your head down, go downhill, go to the 10, or maybe even draw up a look for a set shot. But that's not what we got, obviously.
Yeah. And yeah, like I was thinking as I was going through, wait, we forgot to mention Verge, but yeah, Hoiberg did just decide to roll with McGowan's and Webster for the majority of the second half and all the way through overtime as the primary ball handlers. And he said it was kind of a situational thing. He just liked what those guys were doing. Kobe had knocked down a couple of shots. Bryce was getting downhill, and Verge, he had a really good stretch there where he had like 3 assists in a 4-bucket stretch when Nebraska put together kind of run. And that's the disappointing part. You go through the first 39 minutes of this game, 39 and a half minutes of this game. They played well enough to win the game. And they had some really good stretches of team play. They had multiple guys making an impact. And the other part of it too, that there were some stretches there when they went on some of those runs where it wasn't like they were running great offense and getting wide open looks and easy layups and all that stuff. Like people talk about, they're taking hard shots, like the bad possessions, and that's part of it. But I think some of those bad possessions happen when you just can't make shots, whether you're getting a good look or not. And we see Nebraska fall into that trap over and over again, where they run some good stuff, they still can't convert, and then things kind of spiral out of control. They actually made some shots in this game. There were multiple, especially in the second half, where it stretches where guys just went out and made plays. They knocked down tough shots. They got to the rim. They had, I forgot it was first half or second half, but they had like 3 possessions where they scored really tough layups, like left-handed like shots at the rim, where Bryce had a really tough one, then Casey had a really tough one, and then Bryce drew a goaltend on another. It's like 3 straight plays. And those are guys, that's just guys going out and making a play. It wasn't some great half-court set or anything that got them a wide open layup. Guys just put their head down, went to the basket, and finished through the contact, finished past the defender. And that's something that we're not seeing a ton of this season. They knocked down enough threes in the second half there to be competitive. They shot about 35% for the game, which is, I mean, that's an improvement over what they've been. They were See here, they were 4-10 in the second half. So like that's kind of what you need. And so that's why they gave themselves a chance to win this game. They played mostly solid defense for a lot of that game, but then they also went out and made some plays. And then defensively, they locked down on Liddell and Key, like we said. So there was a lot of good basketball in that, but it's just so frustrating as someone who's, again, been watching this team, I'm sure for you as a fan and someone who's been covering it since 2015, to see them have a chance to win this game, top 15 team. Obviously, they were coming off a COVID pause. You're not going to get opportunities like this in your own gym. The team hadn't played since December 11th. You've got them on the ropes, and because you don't talk on defense, you don't box out, you can't make free throws, you lose the game. So that's the part where it's kind of like the same thing with football, where you were close to winning that game, but how close are you really? Like, is this an outlier where you don't make those plays, or do you consistently not make those plays? And the difference is you played well enough in other phases for that to matter this time. And that's kind of, I think, what we're seeing with this team. And you mentioned Verge and Hoiberg decided to go a different direction there. And I kind of sidetracked myself on that conversation, but finished with 6 points on 1 of 6 shooting, 4 of 6 from the line, 4 assists and 1 turnover in 22 minutes. And he was taking bad shots. And there was 1 or 2 where he was trying to draw contact and didn't get the whistle. There was a couple really bad shots, kind of the mid-range and stuff they were trying to get away from and all that type of stuff. I struggle. What I struggle with is the conversation turns to, oh, you got to turn this over to Kobe bench. And we've talked about this before, but you saw in that last moment there where Hoiberg couldn't have gone back to Verge in that moment. He'd been on the bench for so long. He was so cold. Like, you can't expect a guy to go in there and be able to make a play in that situation. And then it's tough once you get into overtime too, when the magic that had gotten them the lead ran out and they struggled to get good possessions in overtime. And so you kind of fall into the trap there where, yeah, you're right in the hot hand, and that's what Hoiberg said he's going to do. But I just don't think it's sustainable with kind of Kobe as the starting point guard and kind of the lead guy. And you saw he was 0 for 3 inside the arc, and none of them were like, he missed a mid-range kind of little catch and shoot. Good look, but like, it's a wild shot at the rim there with the chance to win it, because he's just not small. He's too small and athletic to consistently score inside the arc against high major competition. And there's only so much he can do. And for all of Verge's swings, and plus minus isn't like something that you want to rely on, but it is noteworthy. I think with the last couple of games, Verge has dropped back into the negative because those are 2 bad games. But he's Nebraska is -4 in Verge's 380 minutes this season, including the Michigan State game. With Webster, they're -8 in 269 minutes. So I think anecdotally, we kind of see the stretches where they do play well with Kobe and think, okay, that's how they have to play. But you forget about the stretches where it doesn't work with Webster. And that's kind of the problem right now that Hoiberg finds him in, is I don't think he has a player that he can rely on in that spot. It's going to have to be a field game. There's going to have to be some games where it is Verge, like the North Carolina State game and a couple of Michigan. He was the only one that was really going in that one. Then there'll be some others where he's making some bad decisions, and you got to give Kobe a shot, and you hope that Kobe can make the right plays.
Yeah, I think Kobe is perfect for that spark plug role. And I think people maybe kind of get lost in like the flash plays, because I mean, he takes some wild shots, but I mean, when the wild shots go in, you're like, we want more of that. We need to see more of that. And that's kind of, the Creighton game, perfect example. He did some more of that again. I mean, I feel like almost every shot that he takes is almost a no, yes kind of shot.
Yeah.
But in this game, naturally for me, I think there's an argument that could be made amongst those of us who have seen far too much Nebraska basketball that 3 of the biggest like gut punch, gut kick, Big Ten losses at that arena have all come to Ohio State. I was having flashbacks of the 2016, the 16-17 game where Glenn Watson falls down with like 2 seconds left.
I forgot about that.
They inbounded under the basket, and Mark Loving lays it in at the buzzer after Glenn falls down, and that's how Ohio State escapes that game. And then, of course, the game in 18-19 where it's already a dead crowd, and then Cope tears his ACL, and that was kind of the day the music died for that season. And then there's this game, which completely different, circumstances, 3 very different teams, 3 very different seasons. But as someone who was a part of 2 of those, I just immediately after a gut punching loss in that arena to Ohio State, I was like, this is a familiar feeling. I've felt this before.
Yeah. And I think as soon as they didn't get it done in regulation, I don't think anybody in that building thought they were going to win it. I know
no one did at home either. I can tell you that. No one did at home.
Ohio State scored on 6 of its 7 possessions in overtime, and Nebraska scored on 3 of its 7 possessions. And 3 of those scores were 3-pointers. So that was just complete
wide open 3-pointers too. Wheeler was wide open on 2 of those. I forget who made the third one, but
it was Michie Johnson. It's tough. You miss an opportunity like that you should have won this game. Make one of those 3 plays that I highlighted. Box out, make your free throws, get back and either make them use up more time, make them get a tougher look. Then you get a chance to steal that thing out. And they couldn't. They went 0 for 3 and game over. So that's kind of moving ahead off of that to Michigan State. And another game, 79-67 was the final. This is another one where Nebraska put together some long stretches of good play against a top 15 team. Michigan State ranked 10th in the AP poll, and they had a lead throughout, and multiple leads. There were 10 lead changes and 4 ties throughout the game. Nebraska gave itself a chance to win this game, and then they just went, like we've seen before, they just went ice cold in the second half and just could not find a way to put the ball in the basket.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic cliche. I think we both tweeted something somewhere along the lines, which is, you got to make shots. They were hanging around early, and that was kind of in part due to the fact that Michigan State kind of sort of loves to turn the ball over. They are very turnover happy. I think Brandon Godden on the broadcast said that they're third from the bottom in turnovers in the league. The only teams who turn it over more are Illinois and Indiana, who Nebraska gets to see within the next 2 weeks, both of those teams. But Michigan State came out, they looked a little lackadaisical offensively, at least with their passing, and like there were some lazy turnovers. And I mean, that could probably partially be attributed to, what kept Nebraska hanging around for a little bit. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're on the road against the top 10 team. Breslin Center is a very tough place to play. If you want to hang around, the shots got to fall, and they just kind of ran out of juice. They made it through about three and more than 3.5 consecutive halves of, good basketball against a good opponent. And then at the end, Michigan State felt like Michigan State couldn't miss.
Yeah. And speaking of couldn't miss, Nebraska got off to a great start. The Huskers hit their first 7 shots from the field. The first 4 of those were assisted. Like, the ball was moving. They hit Derek on a slip to the rim for goal 10. They got, I think, a transition bucket in there. They got Bryce on a kind of relocate 3, high post touch for Derek, and just relocated the wing, catch and shoot, knocked it down. You see him knock down his first 3. He's like, oh, that's a great sign. Is this the night that he gets going? And then Bryce had a couple other early buckets too. I think he started 3 for 3 from the field. And then after the 4 assisted, but you had three self-created buckets. So you had Bryce go to work with a great finish. You had Derek kind of inside going, and then you had Alonzo Verge with really tough 3-point play. And so they had a 17-12 lead early. And it's like, okay, this things are going well. They're playing well. They're getting good looks. They're hitting some tough ones. Shots are going in. We're feeling great outside of uh, obviously the turnovers were feeling that. Nebraska had a few of their own during that stretch. And then they were giving up offensive rebounds. And actually, I tracked some of these. Michigan State only finished with 11 offensive rebounds. That's not a terrible number, but they convert them into 16 second chance points. And a few of those were offensive rebounds. They had multiple offensive rebound possessions. I think 2 in the first half where they had they missed the first putback and they got it back and scored again. So really, I mean, they scored almost every single time they got an offensive rebound. And Nebraska did well for much of the game. You had guys kind of rallying the ball. They had guys boxing out. But when they did give them up, there was a kind of a lapse here and there. They made them pay every single time. And I mean, I watched the replay on the TV. The kind of the online replay wasn't available before we were recording, but stayed up that night and rewatched the game because it's how dedicated I am for you guys. But yeah, they just right off the bat miscommunication, and Max Christie tip slam for Michigan State's first bucket. They had Bryce and Verge both went with the ball handler Tyson Walker and left as he took a pull up jumper and let Christie run right to the rim for the slam. There's another one where kind of they forced Gabe Brown into a tough shot, but Casey was kind of on his hip, had to avoid not fouling him. It was a kind of a leaning forward shot, so he couldn't box him out. And Brown followed the shot up, and this is kind of one of the problems. That's what I'm getting here too. Is Bryce and Lat both went to the ball. They kind of went under the rim instead of finding a body and making contact. So Brown tipped, kind of kept it alive as he followed in, and Joey Hauser got it, missed it, but then put it back in for an and one. And again, that's on the box. Like if you make contact there instead of running to the rim, you go and steal that ball. And another one was like offensive rebound was Derek Walker swatting the ball out of bounds on a chase down. So that's not a rebounding thing. That's a great defensive play by him. And Brown hit a contested 3 late in the clock. So that's just really bad luck. That's them making a play more so than a mistake by Nebraska. And then the other one in the first half was Brown missed a corner 3 and Derek was on his man's hip and couldn't box him out. But the problem was Bryce, again, under the rim instead of making contact. And his man, AJ Hogard, is the one who got it on the weak side and put it back up and in. So I feel like we're being up on Bryce a little bit here, but these are things that he, for his future, for the sake of the team, these are freshman mistakes that he has to learn from and can't continue to make. And he's not the only one that does it, but he was the one that got caught in at least 2 of these. They give up 5 offensive rebounds for 10 points in the first half. So again, they're scoring on almost every single one of these. Second half, they weren't as they had a few chances, but again, it's just you can't put together a complete effort. They actually rebounded pretty well for long stretches of the game, but it's little plays like that if the other team capitalize on, they're absolute crushers for a team and the momentum. You put in all this work to force a stop, and you can't end it with the rebound. And team goes and scores. That's time chewed up. It's a lot of energy you've exerted for nothing, especially when the result is a 3-point play or a 3-pointer. And they had a few possessions. There was one, a big one in the second half where, again, just kind of the first one, second half, Brown missed a pull-up jumper. Bryce was under the rim and his man, and it was a long rebound. So a long shot, you think long rebound, you can't run to the rim. You got to make contact, hold your man, and then read where the ball's going. They didn't score on that one. It was like the first one where they didn't score on. But and then on the next one that I had charted, they missed a score inside. Tominaga, again, he was on Brown and ran to the rim instead of boxing out. And Brown's 6'8" and an athlete. Casey 6'2" and isn't getting very high off the ground. Brown just rebounded, just jumped over the top of him, snatched it out of the air, got the ball moving, and they hit a three with the ball kind of moving around there. And that was during that stretch where they knocked down back-to-back threes, because you go down and Verge misses a shot at the rim and they get a transition three. And that's when they first stretched out in the second half, when they pushed it to 8.
Yeah, Walker hit one and Christie hit the other, if I remember right.
Yep, exactly. So that's kind of, again, it's not a ton of chances, but when they didn't take care of business, and it's simple things like, again, finding your man and making contact. Hoiberg's talked about it multiple times. You got to check out, you got to box out, you got to block out. I think cut out is a phrase, like you call it whatever you want, but it's the little effort. It's a little bit, like, takes a little bit more effort, a little more physicality to go find a man first and then go get the ball. Kind of, as opposed to just, all right, shot goes up, I'm going to run to the rim and hope that the ball comes to me. You got to put in that little extra effort, especially when you're the lesser talented team. You need extra effort. You need to do the little things well. And Nebraska too often doesn't do those things well. So teams are able to kind of create some distance. So that was a huge part of the game, because you look at it, it was they had a 9-point edge in second chance points, which overcomes Nebraska was +6 in the paint. And Michigan State only made one more three than they did. But when you give them those second chances, that's an absolute crusher, especially because Michigan State shot over 50% from the field overall. So on the rare opportunities that you did get a stop, to give up a second chance point, and especially multiple threes, that's an absolute crusher for your defense.
Yeah, and I think back to talking about the need for physicality and effort. Excuse me. I'm sure Coach Hoiberg was preaching, effort, because if there's any Big Ten coach that he is familiar with and what he preaches to his players and what he wants his team to do, it's Tom Izzo. They talked about on the broadcast that after Nebraska's shoot around, that Fred went up to Izzo's office and they talked for half an hour, just shooting, just catching up or what have you. And obviously Fred's son, Jack, played for Coach Izzo for 4 years, and now he's at UT Arlington. But I mean, Fred knows what Tom Izzo is asking of his players, and I'm sure he preached similar to his guys going into this game, if I had to guess. So, but like you said, I mean, it's just the little things. It's the effort plays, the communication or lack thereof. It's just. I will say this: I really liked Max Christie. I liked him. I liked his game on both ends. I also kind of forgot Joey Hauser was still in college. I'll if we're in the trust tree, I'll gladly admit that I almost forgot Joey Hauser was still in college.
I think Joey Hauser almost forgot he was in college, because he, outside of a few games here and there, he has regressed massively, even from where he was last year, let alone where he was at Marquette when he was a younger player. So for whatever reason, that's, like, if he gets going, that makes him even more dangerous. But they didn't need him. He had 3 points. That offensive rebound, putback 3-point play was that tied it at 12 all in the first half that I talked about. That's the only points he scored all day. He had 5 assists, 8 boards, but also 3 turnovers. So he was not a big factor in this one. And neither was Bingham Jr. Marcus Bingham Jr. is their second leading scorer, one of the more improved players in the conference. I mean, his teammate Gabe Brown is probably right up near the top of that list. And Nebraska held him to 14 points on 15 shots. They held Bingham Jr. to 4 points on 4 shots. So a second straight game where Nebraska has done a good job on the guys atop the scouting report and let other guys kind of get off. You mentioned Christie. I talked about kind of the freshman battle. He finished with 21 points on 7 of 9 shooting, 3 of 4 from 3, 4 of 4 from the line. He had a few nice little kind of knockdown pull-ups off of curls. It set some flare screens for him. He got open, knocked down a few threes, and he's a 5-star, kind of in the same range. I think he is 20th in the 24/7 composite. So not kind of the top end surefire lotto pick type of, but a guy that like Bryce has a chance to be a first round pick and be a one and done. And he's kind of been up and down. He hasn't had a great start to the season, but the tools are clearly there at 6'6" with his shooting touch, good size for his position. Then you look in Bryce, he got off to a great start. Like I said, I think he was 3 for 3 to start the game. He finished 2 for 13 the rest of the way. Scored 13 points on 5 of 16 shooting. Was 1 of 7 from 3. So after knocking down that first one, he missed his last 6 of the game. He did have 4 assists, which is great to see because the playmaking has kind of, after a stretch there where he was getting 3-4 assists a game, it's kind of tailed off in recent games. But it also came with 5 turnovers. And we talked about Hoiberg kind of benching guys for bad shots. Start second half, he took a really bad kind of contested mid-range pull-up fadeaway type of shot. And right away, Hoiberg signaled Wilcher to go in and get him. And then before dead ball, he got an open look from 3 on a nice like drive and kick and didn't knock that down either. And then Hoiberg subbed him out. He went back in at the next dead ball and then put him back out there after, I'm sure, explaining, hey, like that's not, we can't be having that. Went back out there and kind of the next chance he had to make a play, got the ball, went to drive. Defender was there. He jump stopped, pivoted, and found CJ Wilcher for a 3 instead of trying to force something up when he didn't have an advantage. He made the right read, made a good play, played off 2 feet, found an open shooter, and they got 3 points out of it. So that's kind of a small positive to come out of that, where you see the kind of the Hoiberg's new kind of like stricter shot selection subbing deal. That's one instance where it did make a positive impact. Fortunately, he literally can't sub at this point someone every single time that they make a bad play because he doesn't have enough players to replace everybody who does it. So that's the problem. But again, we talked about Bryce in the Ohio State game, but he's still, I mean, you kind of went right back to where, again, 7 threes, 9 twos. That's still, that ratio still isn't where you want it to be. Like 7 threes is too many for the way he's shooting it right now. But they got to get more out of him. And part of it is he's kind of the number one option. I was talking to somebody else that I know that just kind of about the season he's had and kind of what the deal is. And he is at the top of every scouting report. Max Christie, he was maybe 3rd or 4th on Nebraska scouting report. He had guys like Brown and Bingham to attract attention. And then Christie was able to get good quality looks because of that. Right now, Bryce doesn't have somebody like that. And he's struggling as kind of that lead guy to generate good looks and to hit the ones that he does get.
Yeah, I think what you just said, I mean, that reminds me, this is something that that our mutual acquaintance Nick Bob said on the broadcast of the Ohio State game. It relates to Christie, and it can also, you could talk about it with Nebraska. He said when you play with good players, shots are going to come to you. And the thing about, prime example of Christie probably being the 3rd or 4th is because of like exactly what you said, with Brown and Bingham on the scouting report, that's going to open up looks and open up shots for guys further down. And Nebraska just doesn't have that luxury right now.
Yeah. So Nebraska got off to a great start. And then I thought the movement, the kind of off ball movement, and then as a result, the ball movement kind of stalled a little bit. They weren't able to sustain it throughout. A big problem was Alonzo Verge, and the officials were not blowing their whistles at all. There were 7 total fouls in the first half, and until kind of like the last 8 minutes where they decided, all right, now we're going to let everybody know we're here, and started whistling a ton. But Verge, he probably did. He was getting some contact. Michigan State was really, they were in the gaps. They were really handsy. They were going for steals. They were sticking their hands in there to try to slow down ball handlers. And the officials weren't calling it. So they were playing the way the game was called. And Verge in particular did not adjust. He just kept putting his head down, going, trying to play through that contact. And it didn't work. And he finished with 5 points on 2 of 10 shooting, 5 assists, 3 turnovers in 29 minutes. So it was another really bad one where it's just decision-making, trying to do too much, not reading the situation. Again, they didn't give you those calls earlier, so why do you keep trying to do the same thing, expecting a different result? At that point, you got to realize they're in the gaps. Let's get the ball moving. Let's try to stretch it out, and then maybe I can shoot a gap after a couple ball reversals or something like that. That's what Nebraska doesn't do well enough or consistently enough right now. And Burge is the biggest problem with that. He thinks, again, I got to make this play every single time he touches the ball. And part of that is, again, guys outside of him don't share it well enough. They don't move, they don't cut hard enough. It's all of it kind of building off of each other. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy there where the guy with the ball doesn't move it enough. So the guys off the ball don't put in the effort to make the ball movement dangerous and effective. So it's like, all right, whose fault is it? It's kind of everybody's fault. And we saw that in this game. And I thought Michigan State really, you saw them really keying on the pick and roll and plugging up those gaps and dropping the backside help to take away, either to not even allow that pass to be completed or to have two guys there after Walker or Eduardo Andre did catch it. And once or twice they got a foul. I think Walker had a good bucket out of it, but there was not a whole lot they were getting out of the pick and roll because of the way Michigan State was playing it. And they were doing that because they were not respecting Nebraska shooters. They were helping off Keisei Tominaga. They were helping off Bryce. They were helping off these guys that are supposed to be the shooters that were supposed to spread the floor coming into the season because they're not shooting it at a good enough rate to scare defenses. So that's going to continue to be a problem. And the ball handlers didn't read that. They didn't realize, all right, they're helping off. This has to be a skip pass instead of trying to feed the roll man here because that's what they're waiting for. They're in position to take that away. So I thought all of that kind of played into gumming up Nebraska's offense. But despite that, again, the turnovers were the biggest reason, but they hung around in this game. They again, I mentioned all the lead changes and stuff, but they got it to within 2 in the second and a half, and then they gave up those back-to-back threes we talked about, kind of stretched out. They got it back down. Michigan State pushed it to double digits, but they got it back down to 6 points at 60-54, with plenty of time left there. So it's still a game at that point. And then that's kind of when the game ended because Michigan State scored on 4 of its next 5 possessions, including 2 threes. I think sometimes it's hard with the way they shift and switch and everything, but I think a couple of those buckets were against the zone. Nebraska switched to the zone and it backfired in this case. But kind of that stretch, Bryce took that deep 3 and it rimmed out. And then on the other end, Brown knocked down a 3. Derek, the one bucket Nebraska had during the stretch, they got it to him, kind of faced up and drove and scored. Next time down, Bryce kind of drove, pivot, and kicked it back to Kobe Webster for a 3, but the defender was there, ended up blocking it out of bounds. Bryce took the handoff off the baseline out of bounds play. Defender went under the screen, and Bryce read it, stepped back for the 3, and missed it. Again, that's probably not that's a good read in that situation if you can make the 3.
Yep.
But he's not making it this season. So that's it's kind of a tough thing. Like, what do you tell him in that situation where he read the situation? If defender goes under the screen on you, you got to make a pay if you're a shooter. And Bryce believes he's a shooter, and he has been a shooter in his past, but not his recent past. So again, another empty possession, and then the next time, kind of they got it back into Derek, and he faced up and tried to attack again, but didn't create an advantage. The off-ball movement wasn't great. He tried to kick it back out, got the ball deflected, stolen, took it the other way for a layup. So at that point, I forgot what the run was there, but you went from down 6 to down 14, I believe. So yeah.
Right. Yep.
So that was kind of the game right there. So it was 54-60 to 70-56. So 10-2 run right there to take their largest lead of the game. And then after that, both teams had stopped scoring and went nearly 2.5 minutes without a point. Kobe had missed the front end of the bonus in there. Bryce got a steal and pushed it ahead, and the defender read it. He tried to dump it off instead of going up and stole the pass. They had a possession where there was no movement whatsoever. Bryce pulled up for a contested 3 and airballed it. You had Verge driving and trying to hit CJ Wilcher cutting along the baseline. Defenders were reading it again in the passing lane there, stole the ball. And then finally, Kobe hit a deep three. And that kind of sparked Nebraska's little run late, where after just going ice cold for so long and basically playing themselves out of the game, then the shots finally started to fall. You had Kobe with the deep three, then Wilcher got a steal and a dunk, and then Wilcher hit another three on the next possession. So it's a quick little 8-point outburst. Got it back down to 10, but that was kind of it at that point.
So I guess I've got a big picture question for you, and it's kind of just can start to wrap it up with this. Yeah. How different, or do you feel different about this team compared to how we felt about a month ago this week? Because about a month ago next week, I should say, because that was the week of the Michigan and Auburn blowout losses, where it felt like the season was already in a tailspin before it began. Fred Hoiberg said his team quit against Michigan, and now here we are. It is about to be the second week of January. They got, they go to Rutgers, they have Illinois and big Kofi Coburn coming to PBA, and then they get a nice little trip to Mackey Arena next week. But how different, or do you feel different about this team, compared to how we felt a month ago? And also, another thing we haven't talked about is we might see Trey McGowan's very soon. So
yeah, I didn't overreact too much to those blowout losses because of just all the circumstances surrounding them, with the illness, the injury, the just being shorthanded, short prep time for some of that, because in large part because of the illness. That was kind of like that Auburn game in particular. That was a scheduled loss just based on where they were as a program, as a team at that point. I wasn't too I didn't believe that I didn't think the season was spiraling out of control at that point, just because of those things. So on the one hand, it's yeah, it definitely is much better. They showed progress from those games, but I also didn't believe that those games were who they were either. So I think this has shown progress, but ultimately, until they're able to make those plays that I talked about, I don't think it'll matter that much how much better. It's kind of like the football team. Same deal. You can improve in however many areas you want, but you still got to be able to win the game. You still got to make the plays in the big moments. You still got to be able to make that box out or make those free throws. And until they do that, it's hard to feel great about this team, the trajectory it's on. That being said, I think McGowan's return could provide a nice little spark for this team. I think they win at least the North Carolina State game and the Ohio State game. I think you had Bryce there, or rather Trey there, to defend Darion Sebron. You had Trey there to defend Malachi Branham after he got hot. I feel like Nebraska would have had enough to hold on to those games if you just get a few more stops on each of those guys. And Trey is more equipped to get those stops than anybody on Nebraska's roster right now. And maybe I don't know at this point. I don't know what to expect from him offensively. He wasn't playing great before it went down, and there was just something you're kind of waiting. What kind of leap had he made previously? So I don't know that he's going to change things dramatically. I think it'll help offensively just to have another ball handling option, another guy that can get into the lane as opposed to just either catch and shoot or just reverse the ball, where you see guys like Latman, Trevor Lakes, guys like these, where if the defender's in their face on the catch or closing out hard, they're not really threats to do something with it consistently. Trey is a guy that you can make something happen with his hand, with the ball in his hands. But defensively is going to be the biggest deal. So if he can get back, and then maybe that'll you put Bryce and Wilcher and some of these guys that are having to defend really good players because there's nobody else. You slide them down to maybe the third option instead, and then maybe your defense can get a little bit stronger overall. So I think it's again a wait and see situation in terms of, all right, this team is getting better, but is it getting better enough to actually win these games? Because we know how tough the Big Ten is, and the road's not getting any easier.
Not at all. No, I would agree. I mean, I think one thing that I've thought about is they've shown they've shown some improvement defensively. And I mean, I think maybe Trey and the energy he brings on that end. I mean, you said it. I mean, I think that's where he's going to be the biggest difference. But I'm not going to say that with Trey back and thanks to the improvements that they've made defensively, that could be something that they hang their hat on. But it's definitely, I mean, it definitely could be like just that extra little, cherry on top of the improvements they've made defensively. It's like, oh, you guys are getting better at this. Well, here's the best defense. Like, I don't know, just something to maybe ponder. Like we said, they get a trip to Rutgers on Saturday, 1 p.m., and then they come back, host Illinois on Tuesday night. Rutgers is weird, man. Rutgers is weird. Looking at their roster, I mean, I feel like it's just a team of guys that have been there for forever with Harper and Baker, even Cliff Omarui, who's listed as a sophomore. Sorry, I had to cough there. Feel like he's been there. Feel like he's been there forever.
Well, and that's because there was another Omarui.
Oh, yeah, Eugene. You're right.
Yeah, so,
Eugene. Right.
Yeah, Cliff is a true sophomore. He was a high 4-star recruit last year as a freshman. Played behind Miles Johnson. Got his feet wet, but wasn't a difference maker. Kind of stepped into that starting role this year, and is having a really nice season. And Ron Harper Jr. isn't playing quite as well as he has previously, but he's shooting the ball at a really good rate, 43% from three. And he's certainly capable as kind of a big power wing. I just thing about Rutgers is I think people overrated them coming into the season because they underrated the loss of Jacob Young and to a lesser degree Montez Mathis. Their guard play, like Geo Baker, again has been in and out of the lineup. He's only played 9 games this season. I've never been particularly high on him anyway. Just he's actually having his most efficient season, I think, yet in his career in the time he has been able to play. So that's good. But Jacob Young was the best guard on the team last year, and Mathis is the guy that started a lot of games for them. And Paul Mulcahy and Caleb McConnell just have not been good at all. To put it mildly, they're both shooting under 36% from the field. So Andre Hyatt transfer from LSU, I believe, hasn't been particularly good. Like there's no depth on the team. It really is Harper and Baker and Omarui, and then everybody else doesn't really scare you. What does scare you is playing at the rack. For whatever reason, this team seems to get superpowers in that arena. I'm not going to call it by its corporate name. It is the rack. But
forever and always the rack.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, you look at this game, this is a winnable game as far as winnable games go for Nebraska this season, except for where it is. Like, this is a team that Nebraska can beat if things click. Again, Rutgers isn't a great team, but they went and beat Purdue in that building.
But then again, they also lost to Lafayette in that building.
Oh,
not Louisiana Lafayette, a small college from somewhere in the Northeast. So Rutgers is the ultimate roller coaster of results. They lost to Lafayette and they beat Purdue when they were ranked number 1. So they are all over the place. Yeah. They just got done beating a depleted Michigan team the other night. We don't know what's happened to Michigan. If we had more time, we'd maybe talk about it. But there's the Big Ten, all sorts of fun. But we talked at length about two. Do I dare say? Nope. Nebraska fans are tired of moral victories.
Yep.
They're tired of them. They're tired of them in all sports, I tell you. But
the other game that they're going to play before we talk again is the Illinois game on Tuesday. It'll be in Lincoln. You're going to have to deal with Kofi Coburn, and I have no idea how this team does that. We won't dive in depth into that one. Illinois is a team that was kind of disappointing early. Andre Curbelo hasn't lived up to expectations, but Alfonso Plummer has kind of stepped into that role, and
I think Curbello's hurt. I think he's only played in 4 games. Yeah.
Plummer's kind of stepped into that role, and it's been and obviously they have Trent Frazier back as a super senior. So that's a team that's going to be really tough. I think they've been playing better basketball as of late, and they just blew out Minnesota. So it's going to be another tough one, but at least you get it at home. It's a tough matchup. And we will talk again next week. Hopefully, we'll see if Nebraska can build some momentum off of these 2 non-moral victories, these 2 close losses. There's that close word again that we've been hearing all year for Nebraska sports. But hopefully.
I know what we can end on. We can end on a positive note. We can end on something that wasn't close, and that is Amy Williams' crew. We can end on a shout out to the Nebraska women's basketball team for their big win over 8th ranked Michigan at Pinnacle Bank Arena the other night. Start to finish, very impressive showing from Amy Williams' team. Crowd was into it. There was some juice in that building. You could even tell on BTN. And they, that team, they take after their coach, man. They take after their coach. As someone who got to interact with Coach Williams and that staff for a couple years, I mean, they're fun. They're fun to watch, and they've been building up to something special for a couple years, I feel like. And big win, first win in general over a top 10 opponent, right? Top 10 opponent since 2014, I think.
Something like that.
Something along those lines, when they beat Duke back then. But something about a highly ranked Michigan team coming into Pinnacle Bank Arena and losing by 20 that warms my cold heart. That was fun. That was fun to watch. So big shout out to the ladies for bouncing back.
Yeah, I was originally planning to open this podcast on that note, and toss out the idea that we might have to just completely switch gears at some point this season if things continue, and make it a Amy Williams podcast with an occasional check-in on men's basketball.
Oh, I mean, we could. We've got the people who could do it. We could rotate. Steve can come in whenever he feels like. Give Happer a call whenever we need. I mean, we got the people who could bounce in here if we wanted to. But
that was a great to hold Naz Hillman to 10 points and 4-14 shooting and 6 turnovers without one of your best defensive front court players in Bella Cravens, who did not play because of injury. You had Alexis Markowski getting her first start and just dropping 20 and 7. It's just an incredible performance by that team, and they just continue to find ways outside of that one Michigan State game when the ball would not go on the rim. They continue to play well and find ways to win. So yeah, we'll keep kind of checking in on that team. We'll have Steve back at some point, but in the meantime, we will talk to you again next week. You can follow along with my coverage at Hail Varsity. I'll have the write-ups of these next 2 games, and you can follow me at Jacob Bigelow _ on Twitter. You can follow Jacob at _Bigelow, correct?
Yep, you got it. You nailed it.
So follow us along on there, and we will talk at you again next week.
A Hurrdat Media Production.